Okay, I have a lot of thoughts to share, so hopefully I can get through them quickly, but in a way that you guys can understand what I feel like I'm seeing. So I have been meditating and praying very deeply for the past few days about where God has us and what he's doing. And literally, I put my daughter down for quiet time and everything kind of just dumped on me so quickly that I had to grab a notebook and jot down everything that was coming to me. And I have 4 pages here that I have to read to you guys. So I'm hoping to explain it quickly, but in a way that makes sense. So yeah, I'm going to be reading off of my notebook. And I'm going to start out with just talking about the Feast of Tabernacles. So the purpose of the Feast of Tabernacles / Sukkot is to commemorate God's faithful provision and protection for the Israelites during their exodus from Egypt. Remember, I have been praying and meditating very deeply about where we're at because I was telling God, I believe that Joshua was told, I believe that he believes what Jesus told him. And I have found no fault in him, and I just feel like something's right about all of this, and I feel like God has us in this Exodus moment. Okay, so the Feast of Tabernacles has a dual purpose, so two purposes. And immediately as I'm reading that, it hits me like 2 moons. The Bible says that the moon is for signs, seasons, times, days, years, and in some translations it will say also for moeds, which I guess is translated to appointed times. So if God has been showing myself and you guys and so many other people that just there's all these dreams that the rapture is getting ready to happen right when people see 2 moons. So if the moon, according to the Bible, can be symbolic of moeds or seasons and times, 2 of them could be the symbolism of a 2/dual feast. So Tabernacles is a dual purpose feast, where not only does it commemorate God's faithfulness and provision and protection for the Israelites during their exodus, which is what Joshua said. Jesus used the word exodus, not rapture, but also the purpose to celebrate the current fall harvest. There is a huge spiritual harvest now ever since Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And then I wrote, God is culminating this whole time from Joshua's prophecy to the rapture. We are being quote unquote exodused out, and it is a process of patience, faith, the state of our hearts, trust. We are now in this spiritual desert as in Egypt. Many are complaining and groaning, Lord, where are you? Save us, bring us out. For the Feast of Tabernacles, for 7 days, participants live in temporary shelters / tabernacles or booths to symbolize the Israelites dwelling in makeshift huts during the wilderness period. And then I wrote, Joshua is not a liar and Jesus is not a liar. Jesus used the word exodus. Can't we see what's happening? Joshua did say that Jesus used the word exodus, but his words were, even though he said exodus, I knew that he meant, I took it to mean the rapture. So Jesus did not use the word rapture. So Jesus is not a liar if he told Joshua this, and Joshua is not automatically a false prophet because he misunderstood something. All throughout the Bible, pretty much every prophecy was misunderstood by the people it was given to or heard by. That's how God works. So for everyone that is upset that things didn't play out technically and literally the way that they wanted it to, doesn't change that any of this could be true and from Jesus. And even if Jesus told him, suppose God used the words tell them that I'm coming on September 23rd, 24th, wouldn't mean that that was when the rapture would take place. Not that Joshua said. From what I heard, I didn't hear him say God said to tell them. He said God told me, but the language barrier there, or when he's trying to share what he heard, just the way that he speaks alone is I just wish somebody would have asked him outright, can you write down on this piece of paper, word for word, exactly what Jesus told you? That way it would be more direct and have a more direct understanding. Like these twins that interview him, it's so frustrating because I'm like, please ask him the right questions. So let me get back to my notes so I don't get off on too many tangents. Okay, so then I wrote September 10th assassination of Charlie Kirk was the fulfillment of those 9/11 dreams that I kept having. I believe it was an inside job, as I believe 9/11 was. And I have been doing my homework on everything Charlie Kirk and what happened there. Hours and hours and hours and days of homework on that. I believe that that was the 9/11 dreams that I told you guys. I've been having dreams that there's another 9/11 coming, and he was literally assassinated the day before 9/11. And everybody was saying after he was assassinated that the spirit in this country was very much the same exact way that it was the morning after 9/11. And then I wrote, days later was Joshua's prophecy, and September 10th began the harvest season. So remember, Tabernacles is not only a celebration and commemoration of God's provision and protection and his faithfulness to the Israelites during the Exodus, but it's a celebration of the current fall harvest. And what happened with Charlie Kirk was the beginning of this huge fall harvest that God has created here. So first with Charlie Kirk, and then with Joshua, that got a lot of people on board as well. Whew, I got a lot of notes to go through, so let me just kind of blaze through these as quickly as I can. If you have any questions, just let me know and I will try to get back to them as soon as I can. And then I wrote, on September 23rd and 24th, Joshua sounded a trumpet. Well, not just Joshua, but all of the children. You can't deny that. So many children, innocent children, and believers all over the world, all of us were getting dreams and visions that seemed to be pointing to that being true. So everyone sounded a trumpet announcing the coming of the Lord, our Exodus, which precedes the Harpazo. It doesn't really make sense that Jesus would be like, okay, snap fingers, rapture. When the rapture itself happens, yes, it will be in the twinkling of an eye. We will be transformed immediately. But if you can believe Joshua, Jesus told him that he would begin the Exodus on that date. And if you can't see that happening right now, then you would have to be blind to not see that that's exactly what's going on. We are in this Exodus type and shadow being led up to the Harpazo. I wrote, the bridegroom delayed, quote unquote, delayed. And believers began to beat fellow servants. Hearts were exposed. Puffed up, people who were puffed up with pride was made evident. Patience was tried. There was grumbling and complaining, just like the Israelites. Moses, have you brought us this far to let us die of thirst? That's basically what's going on right now. We are told to wait, although it tarries, it shall surely come. Jesus said the exodus of his church begins on Joshua's timeline, and it has. That's where we're in the midst of that right now. And then I go on to say the Julian calendar mix-ups were revealed as many gave up watching, pointing to October 6th as the quote-unquote true Feast of Trumpets. But as I shared before, God told me Gregorian calendar, which I've mentioned all this before. Back during when all of this Julian calendar, all the different calendars were being brought to light somewhere, it's been like maybe 10 years ago. I was so like overwhelmed with confusion, and I prayed and I said, God, this is confusion. This is not of you. What calendar do I look for? And then next morning I got Gregorian. So I was like, okay, it makes sense to me that I believe that God would line everything up in the end anyway. Yeah, I trusted he would line everything up. And what some see as October 6th and 7th being Feast of Trumpets due to the timing being off, on Gregorian calendar, it would be Feast of Tabernacles, which would be October 6th, lasting through the 13th. So it's a 7-day feast with one extra day, so an 8-day feast. So then I go on to say Tabernacles. Remember that Tabernacles is a dual purpose feast, so that perfectly illustrates what we are experiencing now, the Exodus theme and a current fall harvest. Charlie Kirk caused revival. Joshua's prophecy caused revival. Even if old watchers fell away, new watchers were born. There is rapture talk all over social media and even in the mainstream media. And then I just kind of added a note, my own opinion. I don't think God will allow this to tarry too much longer because of the risk of time itself knocking away this harvest of souls, as man tends to do when the novelty of things wears off, unfortunately. So I don't see him, bringing in this huge harvest with Charlie Kirk and then another huge harvest all over social media. The most Googled thing during that time was the rapture. So I don't see God bringing this massive harvest and exodus right before the rapture to just let man succumb to what man does, which is fall away when the new wears off, if that makes sense. That's just my opinion. I don't know how long this is going to go on, but I've kind of learned to not try to figure that out too much, and I'm just kind of letting God do what he's doing. And I'm stepping back and trying to have eyes to see what he's doing. And I can see this whole Exodus thing playing out. So the Feast of Tabernacles is also known as the Feast of Ingathering, which also has a rapture theme to it. It is a joyous celebratory festival, an expression of thanksgiving. And also, this feast will be celebrated forever by all nations of the earth. Barry Scarborough today posted, I think it was like 2 different videos where he was sharing his dream that he had about etrogs, which is used during the time of Feast of Tabernacles / Sukkot. And then he also mentions some other, I believe, dreams or things given by other people. And then I will also share the one that I had at the end of this video. So if you haven't seen his video today, go check that out. It's Barry Scarborough. So yeah, he had a lot of dreams about lemons, which he learned were etrogs, which, is it etrog or etrog? I'm not sure, but they are used during this time, and they have to be perfect, unblemished ones. So, then I kind of propose a question here. Was Jesus born during the Feast of Tabernacles timing? Many believe so. And here is a possible correlating scripture, John 1:14. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Plus the belief that shepherds likely are with their flocks in the fields during the autumn feast rather than in winter. And then I wanted to bring to your remembrance that it is believed that Enoch was taken on his birthday. You'll have to do your own research on that because I'm short on time. Just Google, was Enoch taken up to God on the same day that he was born? And you can go down that whole thing. Enoch is one of our rapture types and scenarios, right? Types and shadows. If Jesus was born at Feast of Tabernacles, he is the head, we are the body. When a baby is born, the head and body obviously are born on the same day. The head isn't born and then removed and then the body comes. It all comes at the same time on the same day. And then here I wanted to share a dream that I had in 2023. Some of you guys might remember this one. It was very symbolic. So I had a dream that I saw Elvis in a labor and delivery bed. Just think symbolically as I'm talking about this. I saw the nurses bring his daughter to him, Lisa Marie Presley. He is holding her and looking down at her so proudly. And then I heard the TV behind me say, Lisa Marie Presley has died. Sorry. I then said, she left us on the same day she was born. Okay, that's the end of that dream. So Lisa Marie Presley actually did die on January 12th of 2023, just after New Year's. We either just passed or are nearing the Jewish New Year, depending on how you look at the calendar. So that's very telling. And then God used symbolism in this dream. So Elvis was symbolizing Jesus because they called Elvis the king. Don't get offended. I've shared this before and people just went way off the deep end with people get a little bit too crazy sometimes. No, Elvis is not the king. It's just, this is why Jesus is called the King of Kings, because on earth we have our kings. Elvis, they called, the king of rock and roll. So he's just using symbolism here. If people can't get this kind of stuff, then, the things of God are just too deep for you. And I would suggest not even watching my videos. So he used Elvis as symbolism of himself, Jesus. The baby was brought to Jesus, Lisa Marie Presley, and she is symbolic also because not only is she known as the daughter of the king, which is us, but she is also the bride of the king, as are we, because she married Michael Jackson, another earthly king who they called the King of Pop. And that is an amazing dream that I couldn't even make that up. But yet he used it in a way that I would understand, because I've actually met and talked to Lisa Marie Presley in my life back in 2006. I went to one of her shows near DC. This was way before I was saved. I was a huge Michael Jackson fan, and because of that, I became a fan of Lisa Marie's. And so she started recording music, and she was playing a show not too far from where I live. And so as a date, before my husband and I were married, he took me to one of her shows. And after the show was over, I said hello. We exchanged a few short words. I wanted to get a picture, but we weren't allowed to have our cameras, and it was in my car, and I was so upset about that. But she was the most humble person you can imagine, by the way. I'm just throwing that in there. She was super humble, so nice. She was not stuck up, or I wouldn't even think of that she was a celebrity if I didn't know who she was, because she was so normal and just normal and humble. And very short, might I add. Okay, I'm 5'1.5", and I had to look down at her. So, but the way that God used that, something that I would understand, was so cool. So anyway, I basically said she left us on the same day. How did I word that? She left us on the same day that she was born. So again, if Jesus was born on Feast of Tabernacles, some are thinking that we're going to be raptured on the Feast of Tabernacles. Why would I have this dream showing that same thing? And in real life, Lisa Marie did pass away just after New Year's. And like I said, we just had the Jewish New Year, or we're about to. I don't know. I think God's going to make sense of the calendars in the end. And then the last thing I think I have here, no, one of the last things I wanted to share was my dream. I had a dream that I went to a secondhand store and I was looking for a centerpiece for my table. And I saw a fake lemon tree decoration. It was probably like a foot tall. And let me see. And I said, like, I chose that and I'm like, that's what I want to use as my centerpiece for the table. And then I picked it up and I looked at it and it was like my vision like zoomed in deeper to the lemon tree, and which I now know were etrogs or etrogs or however you say that. And I said, you know, these aren't lemons at all, or etrogs. I said that this is fake. And as I looked at it, it suddenly turned into a Christmas decoration. And it had like Christmas lights all around it. So essentially what I get from that dream is I'm looking at if the lemon tree is symbolizing, you know, Feast of Tabernacles, because excuse me, or Sukkot, because that's what they use at that time. I guess they waved the etrog around in the air. I don't study that stuff too much, but I'm looking at the lemon tree, and the more I look at it, I'm like, wait, that's not right. That's fake. It's actually Christmas, which is symbolic of Jesus's birth. So again, a lot of people think we're about to enter into the Feast of Tabernacles, I guess on October 6th. And in my dream, that was actually Jesus's birth. So again, as you can see on the screen here, well, I'll get to that. That might be actually the last thing that I have here. I'm just trying to follow my notes so that I don't get all jumbled. And then also, yeah, the Christmas decoration was like a Christmas toy, and it was covered in Christmas lights, and Jesus, God is called the Father of Lights. And then I said, would it not be the ultimate gift that the Father preordained the church/bride to be caught up on the Son's birthday? Would that not be amazing? And then I wrote here that churchianity has taught us that birthdays are pagan and evil and you're not supposed, whatever. But even Jesus was greeted with birthday gifts when he was born. And I said, don't the images depicted at Christmas show Jesus being born in something like a stable or a hut, which looks like a tabernacle, which this would be like the symbolism of a booth that huts, you know? So I'm just saying, like, this could really be it. And then I said, could the marriage supper also be the biggest birthday party ever? Maybe not, just throwing something extra out there. But basically what I'm getting at is, ever since Charlie Kirk was assassinated, that has brought a huge revival, a huge harvest of souls right before, you know, the ark door is about to close. And then with Joshua, if you can believe him, Jesus told him the Exodus. And as you can see through everything that's going on and through everything that I mentioned here in my notes, it's been a time, I feel like God did that to see, to weigh our hearts and to examine our hearts and see how people were going to react, and who is really, who really wants him to come back so badly that we're basically, because people will say things like, the mockers will be like, oh, you're just on to the next thing, and then it's on to the next. Well, duh. That's, if you are that in love with Jesus and you follow him wherever he goes, you're going to seek things out like that, thinking, is there any possibility that this could be it? That Jesus could be revealing something to somebody else? Why do we think that only I can have the answers? We all prophesy in part. And to me, if there is a chance that God is revealing to a prophet out there somewhere what he's going to do, then I want to know every single detail there is for it. And if it doesn't play out the way that I think, I have to have faith and trust that despite that, he is going to work it out in his timing. But I can totally see God's fingerprints all over what's going on right now. You know, he wants to see who is really, whose hearts are where they need to be and who is walking in the Spirit. And it's funny that those who are humble and long-suffering and not attacking Joshua and not being vicious and vile, those are the ones whose hearts are in the right place, who are still watching and waiting for this thing to play out. Everyone is looking towards October 6th and 7th. It could be true. He might snatch us out of here before that time. Excuse me. But it's funny that those who have fallen away and just given up altogether and saying, I can't do this anymore, I just forget you guys, they're the one, their hearts are hardened, it seems like. That's just my opinion, but let me know what you guys think. I kind of do have a suspicion that Jesus probably was actually born on the Feast of Tabernacles, and the head is born on the same day as the body. We could be getting raptured on his birthday. If you guys have been on here for as long as me or longer, I've been on here for 13 years. You might remember so many dreams that people had about birthdays. I have my own. I don't know if I ever even shared it. It might have been on my old channel, if so, because it's been years. But I had a dream that I was in like a banquet room, I guess you would call it, like in a hotel or restaurant where they host birthday parties, kind of like a celebratory banquet room, I don't know. And there was a long banquet table, and I walked through the door, and all of a sudden I saw at the table was a lot of people. In the dream they were friends. I don't have any friends in real life, but in the dream I had a lot of friends. They were around the table with gifts, birthday gifts, and there was Jesus, and everybody yelled, "Happy birthday!" And it was a surprise birthday party. And I'm like, it's not my birthday. Why is there this huge surprise birthday party? And why is Jesus here? Like, I will never forget that dream. So it could be true. But let me know your guys' thoughts on that. But yeah, I do believe that when Jesus used the word Exodus, if that's true and that really happened, which I personally believe that it did, then this whole thing is an Exodus. And we're at that Red Sea moment, and God is getting people on the ark and weighing the hearts of those whose hearts are hardened and prideful. And you know, like when I said that, you know, we might even be raptured before October 6th, it makes me think of the scripture that, you know, in the parable of the 10 virgins, you know, they all had oil in their lamps. Some of them just ran out. And then the wise ones, they not only had full lamps, but they also had jars with even more oil in them, as if to say, you know, they thought there could be a chance that they might be waiting out there a little bit longer than they thought. So when we all thought September 23rd, 24th was it, if you had not only oil in your lamp, but extra jars of oil to keep your lamp full, we might be, this Exodus might be over around October 6th and 7th. It might be true, but remember, they all fell asleep. All 10 virgins fell asleep, but only the ones that had the extra oil were allowed in. So just be on your toes at all times is what I get from that. Like, constantly be on the edge of your seat. Follow Jesus wherever he goes. Keep your eyes peeled. Don't fall away. Don't fall asleep. Don't be mistreating other people. Don't harden your hearts. Have a humble, childlike faith in you. I believe that's what he's looking for. So this whole, like in the Exodus, they whined and complained and they didn't trust and they didn't have faith. And so God moved the timeline up from 40 days to 40 years. So like I said before, it's not unlike God. Even if he did say, Joshua, you know, I'm coming on September 23rd, 24th, it's not unlike him to bump things back like he did in the Exodus. So I don't know why we're struggling to see that, but I'm hopeful, I'm excited, I'm watching and waiting, and I love to encourage, so that's why I'm doing this video. All right, bye.